Hi, my name is Ian. Welcome to Central Park, everyone. I work for the Central Park Conservancy, which is a nonprofit that manages Central Park. And if this is your first time joining us for a weekly walk, we bring the park to you through photographs that were taken just in this last week. We know that a lot of people still can't make it to Central Park, so we're going on a walk together and from the comfort of our own homes. So we'll be together for about 15 minutes or so, and you'll see the park as it is right now or just a few days ago. And I'm really excited because today we're going to one of my favorite landscapes in not just Central Park, but all of New York City, Sheep Meadow. And I saw in the chat that we have visitors from all over the world. I saw a lot of New Yorkers. I saw a lot of Americans from other parts of the country, and then also people from Europe. And I think I saw someone in Israel as well. So welcome wherever you're coming from. I'm really excited to bring you through this part of the park that I really love. And it's another hot, scorching day in New York. So maybe it's best that we're able to see the park, admire it virtually, because it's almost even too hot for the park for me. And our mission at the Conservancy is to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and well-being of all. So I hope that this program does give you a nice break in the middle of your day. And whether you've never been to Central Park or you come every day, hopefully coming together and talking about it and maybe even learning a little bit of new information about it helps you appreciate the park even more than you already do. And if you haven't used Zoom before, you haven't been on one of these webinars, there's a few tools that you can use to interact. You can only see my face and hear my voice. Everyone else's cameras are off. Don't worry, but you can still interact with everyone using the chat feature in the Zoom control bar, and then also the Q&A feature. My colleagues Juan and Ryan are on the back end to answer your questions. And also, I neglected to put it on, but we also have a live transcript feature, which I will put on now. You can switch that off as well if you don't want it on your screen. If you do want it on your screen on the Zoom control bar, you should see something that's labeled closed captioning, and you'll be able to activate that if you need that for hearing. And if you're a mobile user, you'll have to go to your audio settings on your device or on your Zoom app to disable that. Without further ado, though, let's jump on in. We are going to the southern end of the park today. So I've outlined it with this blue rectangle, and I'll zoom in even further, and you'll see where we are today. And you'll see Sheep Meadow stands out because it's a huge landscape. It's a 15-acre lawn. It's beautiful in its own right, but in the context of New York City, I think it's even more special. You have to understand that it's hot here in the summer. The city's pretty confined, you know, infamously everyone lives in kind of smaller apartments, and very rarely are there expanses of space that feel so open and bucolic. And so in that context, a huge lawn that's just really well maintained and provides expansive views is even more special. So you got to go into it with that mindset. And we're going to be walking from the west side on Central Park West and West 72nd Street, zigzagging past Mineral Springs to this huge lawn. Here we are, we're on Central Park West. It's crowded, it's hot, it's been about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and I do not know my Celsius conversion, but just believe me, it's very hot here in New York. So we want to get into the park, away from the sun, and into the nice shaded green oasis of Central Park. And here we are. All right, so at West 72nd Street, also known as Women's Gate, we can enter the park here. We see some of these pedicab drivers back, so you know that tourism is really returning to New York. The park has been really alive in these warm months. And although most of the spring blooms that we've been seeing on weekly walks in the past few months are starting to subside, and many different shades of green are really taking over, there's still some flowers we can see. The purple and blue remnants of hydrangeas are there, and then the white flowers in the foreground are spider flowers. So there's still a lot of color to be seen, but I think on today's walk, the photos we'll be seeing are mainly a study in different shades of green. And exhibiting that, or as an example here, we have the wisteria pergola that was a few months ago covered in purple flowers, but now is just green, and it provides a nice little gateway down this path to really a nondescript part of the park. But these, to me, are the areas where like the magic of Central Park really comes through. I love the famous landmarks, like the one we're going to see, but even these paths that are otherwise well, they don't stand out as much, or they don't, maybe you wouldn't recognize them in the photo. To me, this is like quintessential Central Park, just a winding path, nice trees, and these elegant lampposts lining the pathway. And as we go down, we'll see another just shot that I think is emblematic of that description I just gave. Just peaceful. I mean, it really wouldn't stand out maybe in a postcard. You wouldn't be able to pick this out, but to me, it's a million scenes like this that really make up the essence of Central Park. And after walking down this drive, we're going to go forward. We have to cross a little bit of asphalt, so it's a little hot here. But we'll just look out for the traffic that goes here. We'll follow this dog walker, and we'll make it to another checkpoint of shade across the way here. And you'll see just a short walk into the park. It's pretty amazing. After one winding path, you kind of forget that there were even tall buildings around you just 2 minutes ago. And you get to an area like this, which maybe a little less nondescript, because you start to see a pretty prominent feature here, which is this boulder that's sticking up out of the ground. That's something you really can't miss. And these are all over the southern end of the park, and they add a lot of character to the landscape, I think, reminding us of this kind of wild past of Manhattan. There's also a bowling green over here, which is something that stands out. This isn't Sheep Meadow, it's just above Sheep Meadow. But I never knew much about this, so I was curious and came over and took a picture. And it turns out this was something that was really only added in the 1920s as lawn bowling became really popular in New York. And there's a whole club and everything that you've got to sign up for, and you pay for permit fees, and you can use this lawn. But I'm always at Sheep Meadow. I never really look over here. So even for someone who's here all the time, I find there's things that I just don't see, and so there's new things to explore in the park. But just past the bowling and croquet greens, there's something I'm much more familiar with, which is my favorite statue in the park. You can't even see it here. You might have walked by it if you didn't have a knowledgeable guide taking you around the park. But luckily I'm here, and we'll go just past this other boulder with this tree sticking up out of the rock. You can see it here. Up this big chunk of Manhattan mica schist with these striations left by the receding glaciers in the top of it. You'll see maybe in the background you can make something out that isn't a tree. It looks green, so it's blending in quite well, but there's something hidden right over this rock that's not a natural feature. I already told you it's my favorite statue in the park, which is the falconer, which you can see here. You can see a man represented with his bird about to take flight off into the sky. And I love statues like this and a few others that I feel like really fit into the natural landscape of the park. Yes, it's a big hunk of bronze, but because of the animal represented in it and the motion of the figure, I find that it aesthetically, it fits with the park's aesthetic of nature and play almost, even though, well, maybe hunting isn't exactly playing, but there's something yeah, just full of life about it to me. And this came here in 1875. There was an Irish-American businessman named George Kemp who saw a smaller version of this in Europe, and he commissioned the English sculptor of that smaller version, George Simmons, to create a larger version for the park. And that's how it got here. And I love that if you're going on the drive over here, it's something that you can't miss. Although it doesn't stick out in a distasteful way, I think it really blends into the landscape. And just past that, we'll finally get to our destination, past these huge trees. While we're walking around, it's this strange overcast afternoon where there's some blue sky and sun, it's hot, and yet there are also clouds all over the place. And that's really what stuck out to me the most on our walk today. We'll see some more photos. It's like we got to the park just an hour before there was going to be a big rainstorm, and it creates this really cool effect in the sky. So I hope you admire it as we get to the lawn as well. And the last thing we'll see before we're at Sheep Meadow is Mineral Springs. I've showed you this building before if you've been on one of my other walks. It's just a quaint little brick building that has a cafe in it, and I just wanted to highlight. I didn't even know, I didn't hear an announcement, but it's back open. Maybe it's been open a while and I was just oblivious to it, but it was closed for a while because of the pandemic. I think it's nice to see some of the concessions reopen again, and you can come here and grab a coffee or a little snack while you are on the meadow having a little picnic. And so just to orient you, we've walked down, and you can see these paths aren't labeled. They're just kind of those nondescript paths like I mentioned, but now we're getting to the title landscape of our walk, Sheep Meadow. And here it is. I love this little, I use quaint as an adjective already, but I can't think of a better one to describe this, which is just, it's relaxed. There's this unspectacular entrance here, but that's how it should be to me. It's just like, it's just yeah, understated small gate that just lets you onto this great peaceful lawn. And we'll see two new signs at the Conservancy that we've put up recently. I love these because they have some of our friends in the park. This one has Barry the Barred Owl, who is a celebrity in the park as of last November. If you don't know, he was an owl that was in the park, and he's the first of his species that we know of that's been summering in Central Park. And the sign reads, "Help keep my home beautiful and clean. Please carry out what you carry into the park. The park needs us." And that's really a huge part of our work, is just keeping the park clean and taking the trash out and everything. It's a monumental task, while it may seem simple, but if you do come to the park, I hope you do. I hope you enjoy it, but please just help us keep it clean by taking the trash out and keeping Barry's home beautiful. And we also have this other one. I love this one. Squirrel peeking over, talking to you, asking you, or telling you that the overflowing trash cans drive me nuts. I thought these were a really cute touch. So, and they fit into the park great. So there might be other ones around the park. So come visit and check them out. And here we are at Sheep Meadow, just past those signs. And it's really special to be here. I think I came on a weekday, and or I should say we're here on a weekday now, and because it was a little overcast, there weren't too many people on here, so you get that effect I referenced earlier about there being this expansive space in Manhattan, really amplified, because not only is it a huge space, it was also pretty devoid of people. So we kind of are getting to enjoy this huge lawn to ourselves, all 365 of us. And Sheep Meadow itself, you know, it looks like a very simple landscape, but it was actually a very expensive construction project, because this area is very rocky and hilly, and some spots it was wet and low-lying land. So all of that rocks had to be leveled off using gunpowder. Topsoil had to be brought in to level it out, and then grass had to be brought in. So it's a huge lift to create this 15-acre land. And it was originally known as the parade ground, and today it's still a pretty expensive thing to upkeep, just because millions of people come and use it every year. And it's this great green lawn. I can see, I took a picture of the grass here. It's so well maintained. It really feels like few other places in Manhattan, where it's just so lush and well taken care of. And while it looks simple, it's definitely not easy. And yeah, it's been a huge, I think, accomplishment of the Conservancy to be able to upkeep it so well, because you can see pictures from the 20th century that I haven't put in this presentation, but that show, when it was less well taken care of and had more litter, was kind of like a dust bowl because grass wouldn't really grow here when so many people were using it. Yeah. And you can see where we came in from the north side here, and I put a series of pictures together here so we can get a panorama view. So I'm going to flip through the slideshow, and we'll see from standing in the middle of the lawn a 360 view of Sheep Meadow. Looking south, we have the imposing buildings from Midtown looming over our heads. And as we spin around towards Columbus Circle, bleeding into the Upper West Side here, the buildings get a bit lower. And you'll also see some fellow park users, some of them playing on the field, throwing frisbees, and other ones just taking in what little sun there is to take in today. And teleporting very quickly, I wanted to mention the famous restaurant Tavern on the Green is right nearby, and they have these beautiful illustrations of the sheep. And I thought this was a good place to mention that in the 1860s, they weren't quite sure what they were going to do with this space. They designed it as a parade ground for the military, which was never used. It was never used for that purpose, but nevertheless, it was called the parade ground. However, 200 sheep were brought in, and they grazed on this land until the 1930s. And so during that time, the name Sheep Meadow stuck, and that's why we still call it that today. And you can see them immortalized in the logo of Tavern on the Green right nearby. But back to Sheep Meadow. As I mentioned, what really stood out to me is just how green it is, but it's not one shade of green. There are many different shades of green, and that's will kind of be a theme of our weekly walks for the next 2 or 3 months until the leaves start to change, because things can start to look maybe a little monotonous, but to me it's so beautiful, and especially when it's contrasted with the gray sky right here. It creates these really beautiful silhouettes of the trees. And when you're on the east side of Sheep Meadow, there's a grove of mainly pin oaks and northern red oaks that sort of bleeds into where the mall is. So where those trees are in the background, that's the mall. And you can see how this would have been designed as sort of a landscapes that flow into one another. We had the fence up because it's really a necessity for maintaining the lawn. Because there are days after it rains where we can't have people on the lawn or the turf is going to get dug up. And then during the cold months, the lawn is primarily just resting. And so the fence is a necessity, I think. But you can see visually how the landscapes really fit into one another. There's even a beach volleyball net over here. So you can tell that's not an original feature, but definitely a cool addition, I think. And looking west again, you can just see what I'm talking about when I say this is a unique space that kind of gives you a break from not only the noise of the city, but just the feeling like there are people all around you, there are buildings all around you. This is a space to come and get a relief from all of that. And in the distance here, you can even see the dairy, which is under construction right now, but I believe will be finished by the end of the year. And so you can see Sheep Meadow is really situated around a lot of the famous landmarks of the park. So it's a great central place to come and hang out, and maybe you can stop and see other parts of the park while you're here as well. And through this London plane tree, we can see more beautiful sky in the distance. I really was having a great time just looking at all the different views you could take in here. I'm partial to this northern view here because you don't really see many buildings at all. You just see the grass and the trees and the skies, in the sky rather. And I have to say, I think, of course, you want to come to the park on beautiful days, but there's something special about being here on this more eventful weather day, because the way that the clouds were coming into the city was really beautiful. You just want to be able to make sure you're able to get out of the park before the rain really starts coming down. And this view looking east also really caught my eye, the way that the trees are so dark compared to the light sky in the background. And as we wrap up the walk, I wanted to highlight, I think I think it's fair to say one of the most iconic trees in Central Park to me, which is this sawtooth oak, which sits in the middle of Sheep Meadow. It stands out to me because it's all by itself. It's one of the few trees just sort of in the middle of the lawn, and as a result, it doesn't really compete with other trees for sunlight, so its branches grow nice and wide. They're basically growing 5 feet above the ground, so it creates a really nice effect if you want some shade beneath there. And you can see some people are laying out, kind of enjoying the tranquil setting it creates. So that's one that stands out to me. There are many amazing trees in Central Park, but this one's hard to miss because it's in the middle of a otherwise mostly treeless landscape. And you can see we just did a little loop. So today's walk was really casual. I just wanted to come into the park and give another update. And we've been doing this for over a year now, so I'm so happy to see we still have almost 400 people coming and watching our walks. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I wanted to leave you with one more beautiful image of Central Park. The designers who created the park really wanted you to have views like this to give you, I think it'd be fair to say, like a psychological break from the city, as I've mentioned so many times. And when you're here, you kind of forget about all the stressful things going on in your life for a moment, and just even if you're not a tourist, if you're someone who lives in Central Park, or maybe you are a tourist and you're visiting for the first time, no matter who you are, you're standing here and you're like, wow, I'm in the middle of New York City. I'm in the middle of Central Park, this world famous park. It's so cool that I'm here, like enjoying it with other people, or at least that's the reaction that I have. Even as someone who's in the park all the time, sometimes you still need to stop and just say, wow, I can't believe I'm in Central Park. I'm in the middle of this amazing city. Just in the park, nothing to do, just enjoying the landscape. And so I hope that this walk at least conveys some of that feeling, especially on these hot days where it's tough to get out of the house. Otherwise, we'll be back next week for another weekly walk. And I forget where it is actually, but you can check it out on the website. And my colleagues Juan and Ryan will also drop some links for our upcoming programming. So if you are in New York City and you're able to make it to the park, please check out our in-person tours, because we do walks all over the park. They'll drop the link for that in the chat there. And we're still doing some virtual programming, so you can check out the link for that as well that Juan or Ryan will drop. And all of our weekly walks are uploaded to our YouTube channel at Central Park NYC. So if you miss one, you can always go and check it out there. We're so glad we're going to be doing this for really the future. We're going to keep doing these weekly walks, and it's such a great chance to keep in touch with everyone around the world who loves Central Park. So thank you really from the bottom of our hearts for joining us, because it means so much to us that you want to tune in and see this. And I guess we'll see you next week. Please drop more messages in the chat if you have questions. And otherwise, from the Central Park Conservancy, stay safe and be well.